The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between star systems. It was bigger than most moons and sparkled with lights from 1,000 different worlds. Today was special. For the first time in 300 years, a new species would join the Galactic Council. 12 different alien races had gathered in the main hall. The Zephyrians looked like tall blue trees with golden leaves that moved without wind. The crystalline beings were living rocks that sang when they spoke. The Void Singers had no bodies at all, just dark energy that formed shapes in the air. Each race was ancient and powerful. They had ruled space for thousands of years. The humans arrived in a small ship that looked simple compared to the others. Only 3 people came out. They wore plain gray uniforms with no decorations. The leader was a woman named Sarah Chen. She had black hair and calm eyes. The aliens looked at the humans like they were children who had just learned to walk. "Welcome to the Galactic Council," said Chancellor Vex 9 of the Zephyrians. His voice sounded like wind through metal pipes. "You are the youngest species to reach the stars. We will teach you how things work out here." Sarah bowed politely. "We are grateful for this chance to meet you all." The council chamber was enormous. Floating platforms held each species in their preferred environment. Some breathed different gases. Others needed special light or temperature. The humans sat on a simple platform with regular air. "We have prepared the standard civilization protocols for you," announced Keth Prime, leader of the hegemony. His people looked like armored insects the size of bears. "These rules will help you learn your place in the galaxy." A hologram appeared showing hundreds of pages of rules. Sarah read them quietly while the aliens waited. Her face did not change, but her 2 companions shifted in their seats. The rules were harsh. Humans could only settle in 12 star systems. They had to give half of everything they produced to older civilizations. Their military could have no more than 50 ships. They could not make certain weapons or technologies. If they broke any rule, their entire species could be enslaved. "These terms seem very limiting," Sarah said carefully. "Our people will find it hard to grow and prosper under such restrictions." The crystalline being called Resonance of Ages made a sound like breaking glass that meant laughter. "Young species always complain about the protocols. You should be honored to serve your betters." "We have followed these rules for millions of years," added Thought Swirler of the Void Singers. "They keep peace in the galaxy. Chaos comes when new species think they know better than their elders." Sarah looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Some looked friendly, but most seemed bored or annoyed. The humans were just another primitive species to them. Nothing special or dangerous. "We understand that you have experience we lack," Sarah said slowly. "We want peace with all civilizations. But I must warn you about something important." She stood up and her voice became very serious. "My people have a saying. The angriest fire burns in the calmest heart. We will accept these protocols for now. We will try to follow them fairly, but please, I am asking you as friends, please don't enrage us." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then Chancellor Vex 9 made a whistling sound that was Zephyrian laughter. Soon other aliens were laughing too. The sound echoed off the walls. "Did this little creature just threaten us?" asked Keth Prime, clicking his mandibles with amusement. "How charming," said Resonance of Ages. "The babies think they are dangerous." Thought Swirler's dark energy form rippled with humor. "We have destroyed stars, child. We have made entire worlds disappear. What could one small species possibly do to frighten us?" Sarah's face remained calm, but something cold flashed in her eyes. "I hope we never have to find out." The signing ceremony continued without more interruptions. Sarah put her name on the protocols, using an ancient pen made from Zephyrian crystal. Each alien leader also signed, making the agreement official. Humans were now part of the Galactic Council, but as junior members with no real power. After the ceremony, there was a feast. Each species brought food from their homeworld. The humans shared something called chocolate, which several aliens found interesting. Sarah spoke politely with various leaders, learning about their cultures and histories. "Your species seems very peaceful," observed Elder Clix of the Silicon Confederation. "His people looked like living metal statues." "That is good. Violence brings only suffering." "We agree completely," Sarah replied. "Peace is always better than war. We learned that lesson long ago." "Long ago?" Clix tilted his metallic head. "But your species only reached space 50 years ago. How long could your history be?" Sarah smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Longer than you might think, Elder Clix. Much longer." The human delegation left Nexus Prime the next day. Their small ship disappeared into hyperspace, heading back to their small corner of the galaxy. The aliens quickly forgot about them. Humans were just another young species now bound by the protocols. They would cause no problems. Chancellor Vex 9 was already planning how to use human labor for Zephyrian mining operations. Keth Prime wondered if humans would make good slaves for his people's expansion projects. None of them noticed the strange energy readings their sensors had detected when the human ship arrived. None of them questioned how a supposedly primitive species had traveled so far so fast. They had made their first mistake. They had ignored the warning, and they would all remember Sarah Chen's words much sooner than they expected. 3 years had passed since humans joined the Galactic Council. They had kept every promise and followed every rule. Human colonies were built only in the 12 systems they were allowed. They sent half of everything they produced to the older civilizations as required. Their military stayed small and weak, just as the protocols demanded. This made the alien leaders very confident. Humans were obedient pets who caused no trouble. It was time to demand more from them. The first to act was the hegemony of Kethvar. Their warships began stopping human cargo vessels in space. They claimed they were doing safety inspections, but everyone knew they were stealing whatever they wanted. Captain Torres of the merchant ship Bright Hope sent a message to Earth after Kethvar soldiers took half his medical supplies. "They said our bandages might be weapons," he reported. "They took medicine that children need to live. When I protested, they laughed at me." Sarah Chen, now Earth's permanent ambassador, filed a formal complaint with the Council. She presented evidence of the thefts and asked for justice. The response came from Keth Prime himself. "Young species must learn that space is dangerous," he said during a council session. "My people protect human ships from pirates and worse threats. If we take some payment for this protection, that is fair." "But you are the ones taking our supplies," Sarah replied calmly. "Our ships carry medicine and food for sick colonists. When you steal these things, people suffer." Keth Prime's insect-like eyes glowed with amusement. "Steal? We prefer the word collect. Besides, humans breed so quickly. A few less will not matter." Sarah wrote down his exact words in her notebook. Several other ambassadors noticed this, but none of them cared what the human was writing. The crystalline dominion was next to increase pressure on humanity. They had grown jealous of the 3 garden worlds that humans were allowed to keep. These planets had perfect weather and rich soil that could grow food for billions. "It is wasteful for such primitive beings to control such valuable worlds," declared Resonance of Ages during another council meeting. "My people could make better use of these planets. We demand that humans give us 2 of their 3 garden worlds immediately. Our people have worked for years to build farms and cities on those worlds," Sarah said. "Millions of families live there now. Where would they go?" "That is not our problem," replied Harmony of Depths, another crystalline leader. "Perhaps they could find work as servants on other worlds. My people always need creatures to clean our crystal formations." The vote was quick. 8 of the 12 alien races agreed that humans should give up their best worlds. Only the Silicon Confederation and 2 smaller groups voted against it. Sarah stood up slowly when the vote was announced. "This was not part of our original agreement," she said. "We have followed every rule. We have caused no trouble." "Why are you changing the terms now?" Chancellor Vex 9 made his whistling laugh. "Terms change as civilizations grow wiser. Young species must learn to adapt. Besides, what choice do you have? Your 50 little ships cannot fight our combined fleets." Sarah looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Most looked bored or pleased with themselves. None of them seemed to care about the millions of human families who would lose their homes. "We will comply with this decision," Sarah said quietly. "But I am asking you again, as I asked before, please don't enrage us. Please remember that we have always sought peace." This time the laughter was louder. Even the usually quiet races joined in. "Still making threats, little human?" asked Thought Swirler of the Void Singers. "We have been patient with your species, but that patience has limits." "Perhaps humans need a lesson in respect," suggested Mind Render, a new Void Singer who had recently joined the council. "Maybe we should reduce their allowed territory again. 50% seems reasonable." The suggestion was quickly approved. Humans would now be allowed to keep only 6 star systems instead of 12. Half of their colonies would have to be abandoned. Sarah's hands were shaking slightly as she wrote in her notebook, but her voice remained steady. "You are making a mistake. We have tried so hard to be good neighbors. We have accepted every demand, no matter how unfair, but you keep pushing us further. And we will keep pushing until you learn your place," Keth Prime said coldly. "You exist to serve your betters. Nothing more." "Our betters," Sarah repeated softly. She looked up from her notebook, and for just a moment something very old and very sad flickered in her eyes. "I wonder if you really understand what that word means." The meeting ended with humans being given 1 month to evacuate half their colonies. As Sarah packed her papers, Elder Clix of the Silicon Confederation approached her. "I am sorry about this," he said quietly. "My people voted against these demands, but we are outnumbered." "Thank you for trying," Sarah replied. "Your friendship means more than you know. Can I ask you something?" Clix looked around to make sure no one else was listening. "Your species seems very calm about all this. Most young races would be screaming or threatening war by now, but you just write in that notebook and ask them not to enrage you." "Why?" Sarah closed her notebook and looked at the metal being with tired eyes. "Because war is terrible, Elder Clix, more terrible than you can imagine. We know this because—" She paused and seemed to choose her words carefully. "Because we are very old students of what happens when peaceful people are pushed too far." She walked away before Clix could ask what she meant. Back on Earth, the human government held emergency meetings about the new demands. Leaders argued about what to do next. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to keep following the protocols no matter how harsh they became. "They will never stop," said Admiral Martinez, head of the small human fleet. "They see our compliance as weakness. Each demand will be worse than the last." "But if we fight, they will destroy us," replied President Kim. "They have thousands of warships. We have 50. Sarah Chen sat at the table, still writing in her notebook. Finally, she looked up at the arguing leaders. "Send a message to all human colonies," she said quietly. "Tell them to prepare for evacuation, but also tell them to prepare for the other thing. It may be time." "What other thing?" President Kim asked. Sarah's smile was very sad. "The thing we hoped we would never need again." The final straw came 6 months later. The Galactic Council had grown tired of human complaints and requests for fairness. They wanted to teach humanity a lesson that would make them perfectly obedient forever. "The human colony of New Eden must be evacuated immediately," announced Chancellor Vex 9 during an emergency council session. "The hegemony of HFY needs this world for their expansion project," Sarah Chen stood up from her seat. New Eden has 5 million people living on it. They have built homes, schools, and hospitals there. It is not just a colony. It is their home. Then they can find a new home, Keth Prime replied with his clicking laugh. My people need worlds with good soil and clean water. Humans can live anywhere. They are like weeds. Where would 5 million people go? Sarah asked. You have already taken half our worlds. We barely have room for our existing population. Resonance of Ages made her crystal-breaking laugh. That is not our concern. Perhaps humans have grown too numerous. A smaller population might be easier to manage. Sarah's face went very pale. You are talking about letting millions of people die. We are talking about teaching humans their proper place, said Thought Swirler coldly. Young species must learn that their needs come last. The vote was even quicker this time. All the major civilizations agreed that humans should evacuate New Eden within 30 days. The Keth Var hegemony was given permission to remove any humans who refused to leave. This is different from your other demands, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. You are not just taking our resources or our territory now. You are threatening our people directly. Finally, the little human understands, Keth Prime said with satisfaction. Yes, we are threatening you. What will you do about it? Sarah opened her notebook and wrote for a long moment. Her hand was steady now. When she looked up, there was something different about her expression, something that made the empathic races in the chamber feel suddenly uncomfortable. New Eden is not just any colony, she said quietly. It is where we sent the children and elderly when our first world died. It is where we keep our memories and our hope. It is the closest thing we have to a sacred place. Sacred? Mindrender laughed. Primitive superstition. There are no sacred places, only useful resources. Sarah nodded slowly. I see. Then you have made your choice. She looked around the chamber one final time. I gave you warnings. I begged you to show mercy. I asked you again and again not to enrage us, but you would not listen. Are you threatening the council? Chancellor Vex 9 asked with amusement. No, Sarah replied sadly. I am apologizing to you for what comes next. She walked out of the chamber without another word. Behind her, the aliens laughed and made jokes about human arrogance. None of them noticed that every human in the galaxy had suddenly stopped what they were doing to listen to an encrypted message that came from Earth. The Keth Var fleet that was sent to pacify New Eden was the pride of their military. 50 massive warships armed with weapons that could crack planets. They had conquered dozens of worlds with these ships. The fleet commander, war leader Zek Var, expected the handful of human defense ships to run away as soon as they saw his force approaching. Instead, something impossible happened. As the Keth Var ships dropped out of hyperspace near New Eden, they found 12 human vessels waiting for them. The ships looked like the same simple design that humans always used, small, plain, and obviously weak. Attention, human vessels, Zekvar broadcast on all frequencies. You are ordered to surrender immediately, evacuate this world, or be destroyed. The human ship said nothing for a long moment. Then, all across the galaxy, something extraordinary began to happen. Every human ship, every human station, every human colony started broadcasting the same message on every possible frequency. You have enraged us, the message said in Sarah Chen's voice. We are sorry for what comes next. The transmission included detailed specifications that made no sense, energy readings that were impossible, fleet compositions that could not exist. The numbers claimed that humanity had millions of warships hidden across the galaxy, using technology that was thousands of years ahead of anything the Council had ever seen. This is obviously fake, Zekvar told his officers. Humans are trying to scare us with lies. Begin the attack. The Keth Var warships opened fire on the 12 human vessels. Their weapons were powerful enough to destroy small moons. The energy beams struck the human ships directly. Nothing happened. The human ships did not explode. They did not even seem damaged. They just hung in space, absorbing weapons fire that should have vaporized them instantly. Then the human ships began to change. What had looked like simple metal hulls suddenly became something else entirely. Reality seemed to bend around them as hidden systems came online. The ships grew larger, or maybe they had always been large and had only appeared small. Space itself seemed to twist as weapons emerged from dimensions that should not have existed. Impossible, Zekvar whispered as his instruments detected energy levels that broke every law of physics he knew. The Battle of New Eden lasted exactly 14 minutes. When it was over, the entire Kethvar fleet had been reduced to drifting wreckage. Not a single human ship had been damaged. The human vessels had moved like they were dancing, avoiding every shot while their own weapons struck with perfect accuracy. But the most terrifying part was what happened across the galaxy at the exact same moment. Every single world belonging to the Galactic Council found itself surrounded by massive human fleets that seemed to appear from nowhere, ships that looked nothing like the simple vessels humans had been using. These were clearly warships built by a civilization that understood war in ways the Council had never imagined. Ancient defense networks that had protected alien worlds for millions of years went dark in seconds. Planetary shields that had never failed simply turned off. Communication systems that used quantum encryption found themselves broadcasting human messages instead of their own. "This is Ambassador Sarah Chen speaking to all members of the Galactic Council," her voice said from every screen and speaker on every alien world. "For 3 years we tried to be good neighbors. We followed your rules. We accepted your demands. We asked only for basic fairness and the chance to live in peace." The transmission showed footage from the council meetings where aliens had laughed at human warnings and threatened to reduce the human population. "You would not listen to reason," Sarah's voice continued. "You would not accept friendship. You chose to threaten our people and our sacred places. You have enraged us." The image changed to show vast fleets of human warships, more than the Council had ever imagined could exist. Ships that moved through dimensions like they were swimming through water. Weapons that could reach across star systems to strike their targets. "We did not want this," Sarah said, and her voice carried genuine sadness. "We hoped you would be different from the others. We hoped you had learned wisdom in your long lives. But you are the same as all the rest." The transmission ended with coordinates for every council leader to meet at Nexus Prime within 72 hours. "Come alone and unarmed," Sarah's final words echoed across the galaxy. "It is time for you to learn what we tried so hard to avoid teaching you." The council leaders arrived at Nexus Prime in ships that shook with fear. Their mighty fleets were gone, disabled by weapons they could not understand. Their impenetrable defenses had been turned off like children's toys. For the first time in their long lives, they felt truly helpless. Sarah Chen was waiting for them in the same chamber where they had first met humanity 3 years ago. But everything was different now. Instead of 3 humans in simple uniforms, there were dozens of people wearing clothes that seemed to be made from starlight itself. Their technology was clearly far beyond anything the aliens had ever seen. "Welcome back," Sarah said as the alien leaders took their places. Her voice was still polite, but there was something ancient and terrible in her eyes. "I am sorry we had to meet again under these circumstances." Chancellor Vex 9's golden leaves were trembling. "What are you? How did you hide fleets of that size? Our sensors showed you had only 50 ships. Sarah smiled sadly. "Your sensors showed you exactly what we wanted them to see. We have been hiding for a very long time. We are experts at making ourselves look small and harmless." "But your technology," stammered Resonance of Ages. "Your ships appeared from nowhere. They moved through solid matter. They ignored our weapons completely. Such things are impossible. Impossible for you, perhaps, replied an elderly human man who stood beside Sarah. He introduced himself as Director Hayes. We have been working with these technologies for much longer than your civilizations have existed. Keth Prime's insect eyes darted around the room, looking for escape routes. How long? How old is your species, really? Sarah and Director Hayes exchanged a look. Then Sarah pulled out her notebook and opened it to the first page. The writing was in an ancient script that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Our records go back about 47,000 years, she said casually. Before that, things get a bit fuzzy. We were much different then. The silence in the chamber was absolute. The oldest member of the council was Thought Swirler, whose people claimed to be 20,000 years old. Humans were more than twice that age. 47,000 years, Elder Clix repeated in shock. But you only reached space 50 years ago. Our intelligence networks confirm this. Director Hayes laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. You saw us reach space using primitive chemical rockets, yes. What you did not know is that we had already been traveling between stars for thousands of years before your species existed. We chose to start over with simpler technology. Why? Asked Mind Render of the Void Singers. Why pretend to be primitive? Sarah's face became very serious. Because we learned what happens when one species becomes too powerful. We learned the price of absolute dominance, and we decided never to pay that price again. She gestured, and holographic images filled the chamber. They showed ancient human cities that spanned entire star systems, fleets of ships so advanced they looked like living creatures made of pure energy, weapons that could reshape reality itself. This was us at our peak, Director Hayes explained. We called ourselves the Shepherds then. We ruled not just this galaxy, but 7 others. Every species that existed served us in some way. We thought we were bringing order to the universe. What happened? Whispered Harmony of Depths. Sarah's voice became very quiet. We became bored. When there were no more challenges, no more mysteries to solve, we started creating problems just to have something interesting to do. We made species fight each other for our entertainment. We redesigned entire worlds as experiments. We treated thinking beings like toys. The images changed to show massive wars between alien species, worlds being destroyed for trivial reasons, countless civilizations being wiped out because they had become inconvenient or boring. We were monsters, Director Hayes said bluntly. The greatest monsters the universe had ever seen, because we had the power to make our cruelty real on a cosmic scale. So what changed? Asked Elder Clix. We met another species like ourselves, Sarah replied. The ancients had been traveling between universes for millions of years. They had seen what we were becoming because they had once been the same thing. They gave us a choice. The images showed beings of incredible power meeting in a space that existed between dimensions. The conversation that followed would determine the fate of all reality. The ancients told us we could continue as we were and eventually consume everything that existed, Director Hayes continued. Or we could choose a different path. We could give up our power and try to become something better. Most of our people chose to transcend physical reality entirely. They joined the ancients in exploring the deeper mysteries of existence. But some of us chose to stay behind and try to rebuild our species as something worthy of respect. Sarah closed her notebook. We destroyed our great fleets and our reality-shaping weapons. We found a small world at the edge of nothing and started over with stone tools and fire. We spent 40,000 years learning how to be people instead of gods. The alien leaders sat in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about the universe had just been turned upside down. The species they had been bullying was not just older than them, It was older than the concept of galactic civilization itself. The energy barriers that surround this galactic cluster, Thought Swirler said slowly. The ones we always thought were natural phenomena. We built those, Director Hayes confirmed. After our last Great War, we wanted to make sure that what happened in this part of space stayed contained. We were trying to protect the rest of the universe from us. But you came back, Chancellor Vex 9 said accusingly. You could have stayed hidden forever. Why did you reveal yourselves? Sarah stood up and walked to the great window that showed the stars beyond Nexus Prime. Because we hoped you had learned something we had not. We hoped that younger species might find wisdom without having to make our mistakes. We wanted to see if civilizations could grow up without becoming monsters. She turned back to face the council, and her expression was infinitely sad. But you proved that intelligence and age do not automatically create wisdom. You became petty tyrants just like we once were. The only difference is that you lack the power to destroy universes. So now what? Keth Prime asked, his voice barely a whisper. Will you destroy us? Make us your slaves? No, Sarah said firmly. We will not become monsters again, no matter what you do. But we cannot allow you to continue as you were. Too many innocent people were suffering under your rule. Director Hayes stepped forward. Your militaries have been permanently disabled, but your people are unharmed. Your governments will be restructured to serve all citizens equally, not just the powerful, and there will be observers to make sure these changes are real. Observers? Asked Resonance of Ages. Sarah smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Other species that you dismissed as primitive or weak. They will have real power now, and you will answer to them. The strong serving the weak instead of the other way around. The transformation of galactic society had already begun. Across space, the enslaved and oppressed species were being given tools and knowledge to build better lives. The bullies and tyrants found themselves having to ask permission from those they had once tormented. It was justice, but it was also mercy. And the aliens in that chamber finally understood what Sarah Chen had been trying to tell them from the very beginning. Some warnings should be heeded. 1 year had passed since the day humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. The changes were so complete that most beings could barely remember how things used to be. The old Galactic Council was gone, replaced by something called the Cooperative Assembly. Every species had equal representation, regardless of age or military power. Former slave races now sat as equals beside their former masters. The Zephyrian Chancellor, who had once laughed at human warnings, now took orders from a small furry species that his people had previously used as servants. Sarah Chen walked through the new halls of Nexus Prime, watching representatives from hundreds of species working together to solve problems instead of creating them. The station itself had been expanded using human technology that seemed to grow new sections from nothing. Impossible gardens bloomed in zero gravity, filled with plants from 1,000 worlds. It is hard to believe how quickly everything changed, said Elder Clix, joining Sarah at an observation window. The Silicon Confederation had become one of humanity's closest allies, helping to design new systems of fair government. Change is easy when people are motivated, Sarah replied. Fear motivated your old council leaders to dominate others. Hope motivates the new assembly to cooperate. They watched as a group of young beings from different species played together in one of the station's parks. Their parents sat nearby, sharing food and stories. A year ago, most of these races had been enemies. Can I ask you something that has been troubling me? Clix said carefully. Of course. Your people have the power to reshape reality itself. You could solve every problem in the galaxy instantly. Why do you make us do the work ourselves? Why not just fix everything with your technology? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Because we learned something important during our 40,000 years of hiding. People only value what they build themselves. If we solve all your problems, you become dependent on us. Eventually, you start to worship us, and gods always become monsters in the end." She pointed to a group of young engineers from various species working on a new water purification system. "See how proud they are of their work? How carefully they test each component? If we simply gave them a perfect water purifier, they would learn nothing. But when they build it themselves, they understand how it works. They can teach others. They can improve on the design." "And they do not need you anymore," Clix realized. "Exactly. Our goal is to become unnecessary as quickly as possible. We want to go back into hiding and let you all build your own future." As if summoned by her words, Director Hayes appeared beside them. The elderly human was smiling, which was still an unusual sight. He had spent most of his life preparing for war, not peace. "Good news," he announced. "The Assembly just passed the non-aggression accords. All member species have agreed to resolve disputes through negotiation instead of violence. The vote was unanimous." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Even the Kethvar hegemony?" "Especially them. Turns out that when you are not allowed to solve problems by conquering people, you get very good at talking instead. Who knew?" The three of them laughed, but Sarah's expression quickly became serious again. "How are our people handling the transition back to isolation?" Director Hayes sighed. "Some are enjoying retirement. Others are restless. After 47,000 years, it is hard to remember how to be normal, but most understand why it is necessary." The human population had scattered across the galaxy again, but this time they were not hiding their technology so completely. They had become teachers and advisors, helping younger species develop their own advanced systems. But they were careful never to give away too much at once. "There is one more thing," Director Hayes continued. "The deep space monitors have detected something interesting. The energy barriers around our galactic cluster are being tested by outside forces." Sarah frowned. "The Devourers?" "Possibly, or maybe just curious explorers. Either way, something big is coming this way." Elder Clix looked confused. "Devourers? What are those?" Sarah and Director Hayes exchanged a worried glance. Then Sarah explained. "Remember how we told you that we were not the first species to gain cosmic power? Well, we were also not the last. There are things out there that make our old empire look peaceful by comparison." "The Devourers consume entire galaxies," Director Hayes added. "Not just the planets or the stars, they eat space itself. They turn reality into nothing and move on to the next target. We built the barriers to keep them out, but nothing lasts forever." "How long do we have?" Clix asked. "If our calculations are correct, about 500 years before they find a way through," Sarah said. "Maybe longer if the barriers hold better than expected." 500 years, Clix repeated thoughtfully. "Long enough for the younger species to become much more advanced." "That is the hope," Sarah agreed. "By the time the Devourers arrive, we want this galaxy to be defended by a true alliance of equals, not just human technology. We want you all to be strong enough to stand without us." "And will you fight beside us when that time comes?" Clix asked. Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking of the ancient weapons that humanity had locked away and the transcended members of their species who watched from beyond reality itself. "If we must," she said finally, "but we hope it will not be necessary. We hope you will have become something we never managed to be. Powerful without being cruel. Advanced without being arrogant." Over the following months, the pace of change in the galaxy accelerated. The Assembly established new research stations where species could share knowledge freely. Trade routes that had been controlled by the strong were open to everyone. Conflicts that had burned for centuries were resolved through careful negotiation. The former council races struggled at first with their reduced status, but gradually they began to appreciate the benefits of cooperation. The Zephyrians discovered that other species had artistic traditions that made their own culture richer. The crystalline Dominion learned that smaller races often had insights that larger ones missed. Most surprising of all, Keth Prime of the former hegemony became one of the Assembly's most effective peacekeepers. His natural aggression, channeled properly, made him excellent at mediating disputes between other warrior cultures. "It is amazing how much energy we wasted on fighting," he admitted to Sarah during one assembly session. "Now that we use that same energy for building, we accomplish more in a year than we used to in a century." "Conflict has its place," Sarah replied. "Competition drives innovation and growth. The trick is learning to compete without trying to destroy each other." As the second year of the New Order began, humanity started to fade from public view again. Their advisors became less visible. Their ships appeared less frequently. The galaxy was learning to run itself. Sarah Chen made one final appearance before the Assembly, announcing that humanity was returning to its traditional role as hidden observers. "You no longer need us to hold your hands," she said with genuine pride. "You have built something beautiful here, something that gives us hope for the future." "But you will be watching?" asked the representative from a small species that had recently discovered faster-than-light travel. "Always," Sarah promised. "We will be in the spaces between spaces, ready to help if you truly need us. But we believe you will handle whatever comes next on your own." As her ship departed from Nexus Prime for the last time, Sarah looked back at the glowing station where hundreds of species were working together in harmony. It had taken 47,000 years, but humanity had finally learned how to use its power wisely. By teaching others to be strong instead of making them weak, the galaxy was in good hands. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the stars, ancient evils would find a very different welcome than they expected when they finally arrived. The students had become teachers. The teachers had become something even better. They had become friends.